Today we're going to go through 5 questions you need to ask yourself before signing a contract of sale to buy a home. So you think about buying a house? Think about signing a contract of sale. It's kind of scary, but you might start asking yourself a few questions. Is this the right thing to do? Should I be doing this? And they're all valid. But today we're going to go through questions that you need to ask yourself to make sure you're covered on the contract, that you've got the right conditions on there, that you're not going to get caught out, that you're not going to be floundering and actually signing an unconditional contract and throwing away your cooling off period. So Nathan, let's go.
Question number 1, are you getting what you're looking for? So Jaden, we've seen this many a times where people think they're getting the dryer, they're getting the fridge, they're getting this, that, the other. What's that look like?
Mate, so you're right. You might go into a place where you see, I don't know, the dryer's a good one because they're usually bolted down and you just assume that that's going to be part of the house, or, you know, the oven, I think it's fair to say it's going to be there. But I've seen cases where people have taken them away because it wasn't included in the contract. So the first thing you need to check in the contract is, are all the items in the house included in there? Now, they refer to them in the contract using big legal speak as chattels. So that can include actually writing on the contract saying dishwasher, clothes dryer,
air conditioning
unit. Like it might sound silly, but we've seen stories of where things have gone missing. The pool filter parts have come out of there. It's genuinely insane. But it even goes one step further than this. Nathan, I know there's a case that you had recently where the client had to speak to their conveyancer, and your conveyancer solicitor will usually do checks and make sure that there's not going to be any highways built on your house, or there's not an easement, which means that the government can basically take off a big chunk of your land. But they were buying a house that was on 400 square meters, let's say. And were they getting their full 400 square meters?
Yeah, so interestingly, this customer had a fence going through their part of the property, which wasn't removable. And when they looked at the 400 square meters that was advertised, they're only getting 370 square meters. They went back and they renegotiated the contract down because they were under the impression they were getting 400 square meters. So with all these sort of things, it's extremely important you get advice from your legal team, whether it be a solicitor or conveyancer, and ensure that they represent you to make sure it's all part of the contract.
Well, and the thing I like about that story too is the client went back and said, hey, you guys are cheating me basically 10% of my land. I want to get a contract price. I want to get a reduction in the price. And he ended up negotiating like a reasonable chunk off there, I'm pretty certain. So, you know, 10, 20, 30 grand. So it's worth doing these checks because A, you're going to get what you're looking for, and B, you can actually save some money because they shouldn't be getting away with that.
Question number 2, how much deposit do I actually need to pay? Now, I get asked this question a lot. When you get the contract of sale, the real estate agent will tell you to put a specific amount, usually 3, 4, 5% of the contract amount. What is actually required, or what should I put down on the contract there, Jaden?
Well, so this is where it's confusing because for your bank, you might need 5, 10, 15, 20% deposit to buy the place. And that's fine. But when you're signing the contract of sale, you actually might need to pay, you know, the real estate agent, like you said, might ask you to pay 5% or 10%. And you got to get that 10% of the purchase price, might be 40 or 50 or 60 grand, into their account the next day. So the answer to this question is, it's really up to you. It's all negotiable. Everything's negotiable on this stuff. So you just need to be aware of how much cash you have at that time when you're signing the contract of sale. Because the reality is, if you're borrowing money from parents, if you're getting the first homeowners grant, you might not have your full 5 or 10% deposit available on that day. And you need to make sure the real estate agent's aware of this when you're signing the contract, because then that can actually affect things later on.
Question number 3, does a contract have any special conditions? So I think this one's a really neat one. If you're in a power position when you're negotiating, you can add special conditions in there, as many as you like. One that I usually see people miss is getting the property professionally bond cleaned. Because there's nothing worse when you buy your property and you get in there and it's dirty, or it hasn't been cleaned properly.
Like in the back cupboard, you don't want that.
So remember, check the special conditions and add any that you think are relevant to you.
Yeah, so like another weird special condition we see here in Queensland often is about insurance. So you might not know, but in Queensland, when you sign a contract, when's the insurance due, Nathan?
It's usually 5 p.m. of the next business day after the contract has been accepted, and that's in the back of the terms and conditions, usually under Section 8, rights and obligations. So that's right at the back of the terms and conditions glossary.
So in other words, when you sign a contract to sell on a house in Queensland, even though you don't even own the place, you're liable to pay for its insurance from 5 p.m. the next day of signing the contract. It's insane. But this is where you can actually use a special condition in your favor, and you can make the current owner liable for that insurance until settlement. Now, it's not one we see often, but it is one that you can actually use to work in your favor to help save 30 days of insurance. Otherwise, are there any other solutions?
And there's usually insurers that will give you a complimentary cover until settlement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all not bad, all, pretty flexible if you do have to end up getting that cover in place.
You just want to get it because you don't want the house to burn down and be caught out.
Question number 4, how long should my settlement period be?
Yeah, so in Queensland, the default can be, usually it's 45 days, but sometimes they'll stick 30 days on there. In New South Wales, it can be 60 days, and in other states, it's actually more. But it's important to know this, because you could make a 30-day settlement and not realise that the settlement day is on Christmas. Or you might not be able to get removalists, you might not be able to get power connected. There can be all sorts of issues. So just being aware of the settlement date and how long the settlement period is can help you just work around that and make sure you don't get caught out.
And lastly, is there any cooling off period? Jaden, what does a cooling off period entail, and why should I be concerned about having this on the contract to sell?
Yeah, so in Queensland, by default, you get a 5-day cooling off period, and it's similar interstate depending on where you are. Now, I know in New South Wales, when I bought my first place, the real estate agent basically made me sign a waiver of cooling off period. And what that means is, well, the cooling off period is there to protect you. So it means that if you decide within those 5 days that, you know what, I didn't really want to buy this place, and although my finance can get approved and although the building and pests is okay, I want to pull out, the cooling off period lets you do that. It lets you do just that. There are some penalties.
Yeah, you can pull at any time within that 5 days. You'll lose 0.25% of the purchase price. So if it's $500, I think it's $1,200.
500,000.
Sorry, 500,000 is $1,200. So we're not talking a huge amount of money. Once again, you need no reasons to pull out. Within 5 days, you're cooling off. You can have any reason to do so.
Good thing in Queensland is this might not be as valid because you can have other clauses in like finance or building and pests to be able to get out of the contract and not have to lose any money at all. So it's worth, again, like Nathan said earlier, speaking to your lawyer, speaking to your solicitor, speaking to your conveyancer to see what your options are if you find the property just isn't suitable and that you actually don't really want to go ahead. So there are 5 questions that you need to ask yourself before you sign a contract to sell to buy a home. Which was your favorite? Which you're going to use? It's all right, you can copy, we don't mind. Let us know. Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear. And if you have any questions or if you want a future topic covered in a video, let us know at huntergalloway.com.au.